Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Bharat Upskill Project. Today I have my good friend Dinesh with me, and his career journey is phenomenal. You will get to learn a lot. You will get to learn how to make career pivots and make successful career pivots. Thank you so much, Dinesh, for taking out time. And I know it's a Saturday morning, but again, very thankful for you to taking out time and super grateful to have you here.
No, cheers. Yeah, happy to be here. I wouldn't say a lot of career pivots and phenomenal, but whatever I've learned a little bit, I am happy to share.
Sure. So I'll like to start by asking you one question. So you have been an editor, you have been a founder, you have been a teacher, now you have turned into a VC. So can you walk us through your career journey, how everything started for you?
So just a bit of context as to how and where, etc. So obviously, I did a lot of things through college. When I finished my plus two back in Udupi, I'm from this small town in Udupi, and I reached Bangalore. I met a lot of seniors in my engineering college who really encouraged me to pick up a lot of things. Right, I wasn't really into writing, wasn't really into you know. Anything that involved putting in a lot of effort. I just wanted to study and figure out where should I find my new job. But I've met a lot of people who encourage me to pick up a lot of new things, and that's how writing is something that I picked up on the way. I started writing a little bit. That's why college magazine was there. Got into that team, and that's how I ended up doing a little bit of things in college. But after that, I think just how engineering led me to my first job. It was just pure luck. I was a computer science engineer. I really enjoyed learning algorithms to start with. Was really fascinated by all my cousins who were working in the software development industry, and that's how I really picked it up. Inherently, I didn't really have anything for software development anyway. But towards the end of my undergraduate degree, I realized maybe coding is not something that I really want to get into. I wasn't really good at it as well. So when D Shaw came for the campus placements, I was super prepared because I knew I wasn't really the smartest in the college. I had to be more prepared. I had my resume prepared. I was prepared for the interview. I had prepared some of the generic questions that they may ask, etc. And that's how that really happened. The first interview, nobody else probably was prepared, and I think that just helped. So it was pure luck. Right place at the right time. Ended up joining D Shaw India. Ended up learning finance. When I joined D Shaw, I think that's when I got introduced to the markets really. Even before that, I think I had few people in the family who used to invest and used to talk about banks and insurance, etc. But D Shaw India really gave me that exposure to really understand what it really meant to invest in the markets, what are derivatives, what is futures, what is options. And that's where the journey really started. I worked there for a couple of years. I spent every single day there trying to learn as much as possible. From there, I think, the journey towards where I am today, again, has been of pure luck. Went from D Shaw India back to consulting. I think consulting again happened serendipitously because I was really curious because I think 2 years working in a hedge fund, I think I was like, maybe I need a customer facing role also to get some skills there. I ended up joining EY India. From there, I realized, I really need to learn more about finance for me to have a mainstream finance job. So when did my MBA. And then after MBA, I ended up working in Canada for a bit. I did my MBA in Canada. Ended up working there. And I think after that, I really wanted to come back to India and figure out, what I can do here. And that's how I ended up here. And again, being at Rainmatter at Zerodha, again, right place at the right time. I think when I reached out to Zerodha, they were trying to find somebody who could come and help out with the Rainmatter side of things. And I was also really curious about the business side of things for Zerodha. And again, that's how it really happened. So didn't really have a lot of experience for some of these roles that I took up. Again, ended up learning on the job, and I think it's just curiosity of some of these things that I want to do. I think has driven me towards some of these roles. So again, it's when I say luck, I just mean that openness to experiment because I think some of these are absolute risks, right? Like leaving D Shaw India way back in 2016 probably was a risk, and I think I took that thinking, you know, come what may, I'm not going to regret it looking back 5 years, and today I certainly don't. Similarly, leaving Canada for Zerodha was again probably a risk, but I for sure knew that it is worth the risk, and today I don't regret it. So all of these roles, I think that you really described, I think all of it happened because I was inherently curious and I was really wanting to give it a shot, and I knew if not now, then when, and I knew I
Right.
don't want to be ever looking back at stuff. So that's how all of these things happen.
Got it. I think great points. One thing that people generally tend to do, what I have seen through my interaction, is that they always put a money lens while making these moves or pivots. So, what is your one tip or advice to them that if you are trying to experiment something, what are other key factors that you should be looking at apart from the monetary side of things?
Yeah, and I think, I know everybody says this and everybody gives this generic advice that, money should be a byproduct. And I believe in that too. And I know
Right.
it's very difficult to implement, right? I mean, it's easy for anybody to say that, but, I get it. I think, while all of us can say money is not important, I think people's situation context is very different. And, somebody's circumstances might be very different.
Right.
But I'd say, if you're really doing something that you like, if you're really chasing something that you dream about working in every single day, I'm sure you'll do really well in that field, right? For example, if there's a person who really wants to be an investor, he'll put in all the effort every single day to become one of the best investors out there. What that means is you have an advantage over everybody else who's doing that job just for the sake of it. And that means you'll do well. You'll do much better than everybody else. And that just catches up in terms of your pay, your outcomes. I think all of that will lead to money. So, while everybody says money is not important, the context is if you're doing what you do, what you really like, I think you'll eventually end up making money as a byproduct. So I think that is more important. But I think when you're starting out as a career to the late stage career, I think there is a difference there as well. When you're
Right.
starting out, I'd say, experiment as much as possible. Take all kinds of risks because that's when you have the lowest or the least to lose, right? And when you're probably 45, when you're probably 40, I think taking risks is probably much more difficult than when you're 22, 23, 24, 25. So when you're early in your career, I'd say take as many risks as possible. Try as many things as possible. Not everybody is really fortunate enough to know what they really want to do in life, and nobody really knows. Everybody figures it. Everybody probably thinks that they know what they want in life. So, we all need to understand this, and nobody has really figured it out. So everybody is confused. Everybody is figuring it out on the way. So everybody needs to know that there is no, and there's nobody here who's figured out the answer. So I think you figure it out. Chase what you're curious about. Chase what you really want to do. Figure out what wakes you up on a Monday that pushes you to go to work. And I
Right.
think if you do that, eventually you'll be successful. Eventually, money will follow it.
Yeah, I completely agree. 20s are meant to experiment. Like I
Yeah.
spent my 20s basically doing IT jobs, but now I look at people who are in their 20s. Somebody is creating content, somebody is doing their freelancing work. So everybody is figuring it out.
Yeah.
One interesting part of your journey, Dinesh, has been your stay in Canada. Plus, now you are back in India. So, what are some of the stark differences between these two countries? And a lot of people aspire to go to Canada. So, what are some tips or advices that you'd like to share with them if somebody is planning to build their career in Canada?
The only stark difference I found between India and Canada, at least the one that I noticed, was in Canada, people really took it easy with their professional lives, right? I think the competition to, say, professional fields is slightly lesser because of obviously demographics, right? And so India, obviously, for every job, there are too many people vying for it. And, that really pushes you, and there's a lot of competition. But I think culture wise, there's obviously a lot of differences in terms of how people really work, communication, how people really think about, spending time with your work, your family, what you really do for recreation. I think all of those are subtle differences. But for me, it was all about learning. So I went to Canada thinking if I want to do my higher education, I wanted to do it around peers who probably weren't from the same country. I wanted to have that diversity to figure how different people really think, and wanted to work in a different geography as well. So I was able to do that. So I had simple goals. It was just those two things. It wasn't really anything fancy. I didn't really have anything else in mind. I realized if I'm going to invest some time, energy, money, etc., in doing my higher education, I might as well try to do it out of my comfort zone. So that's the whole point of going to Canada. But I think with India, I always wanted to come back. I knew, this is where I wanted to build my long term career. That's how I ended up coming back as well. Right now.
Got it. And you have been there, so does monetarily it makes any difference? Like if we factor in purchasing power parity,
Yeah.
is your saving on the higher end, or because of whole scenario and the job thing that we are seeing in Canada, it's more or less in line with what you can make in a decent company in India if we talk about savings only.
I think, yeah, I think, it's contextually different for different kind of jobs.
Right.
Obviously, yes. I think if you look at the dollar conversion from Canadian dollars to Indian rupees, I think you end up saving probably a little bit more. But again, that depends upon your living conditions, your spending,
Hmm.
your family conditions there, etc. Right? If you have a mortgage there, if you have a home, if you have a car loan, if you have other
Mm,
spending, etc.
right.
I think all of that really impacts. But if you're living frugally, I think then you end up saving. But I think the lifestyle is completely different. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
one. That being said, I think the second part of your question, in the sense that I would say a lot of life is also about experiences. Like if you really enjoy Indian food, if you really want to spend a lot of time with family and friends who are in India, or a lot of time with the community that has helped bring you up, etc. I think you can't put a cost and money or price tag for it. So I think while savings is one, I think you also have to look at it from the other lens in terms of fulfillment in life. And I think that is more important as well. So if anybody is looking to move to Canada or any other country for that matter, I think one thing you got to make peace with is the fact that all of your friends are going to be here, probably, perhaps all of your family is going to be here. So as long as you're okay to kind of not be around some of those things and just wondering about the financial outcomes, then sure, I'm sure there's a way to kind of make it work. But I'd say the cost of all of the other things that you can't consider as a dollar value, I think that really impacts as well. So I think people should know that if you're heading outside for education, wanting to work outside, then I think there are sacrifices that you have to make, and money only goes so far. I think eventually
Yeah,
you
yeah.
end up making enough money. I think after that, every incremental dollar probably doesn't make a difference. So yeah, I think some of those other things are probably more important than dollars. But the dollar question anyway, if you Google that answer today, I think everybody who's watching this probably will find out how much of a difference it is, 20-30% more, etc. But the medium jobs, like say a consultant job in India versus consultant job in Canada, I'm sure the job in Canada or the US pays a little bit more, but the quality of work that is expected is also more.
Mm, right.
Kind of
Right.
capabilities that is expected is also more. The expectations are more as well. And obviously, I think once you're there, you'll push yourself and do well. But yeah, I think some of that other context is also very important.
Very important. Yeah, completely get it. Plus, you get 10-minute deliveries in India that you won't get anywhere else.
Correct, correct.
I'll slightly move to fintech side of things. So, what is your current role at Rain Matter, and what are some of the day-to-day activities that you do here?
So I spend some time on the Zerodha side of things as well, and I spend some
Okay.
time on the Rain Matter side of things as well.
Right.
And obviously, I think Rain Matter is very core to what Zerodha is also doing today. It's an initiative where we wanted to kind of give back to the startup community. Nithin and Kailash started this way back in 2016, because when we built our Kite application, we also built out APIs so that people can come build trading, investing apps on top of our infrastructure. So it started there. It wasn't really meant to be a VC fund like you call it. It is not a VC fund. We don't think like a VC. We don't act like a VC. While we are investing in startups, the structure isn't like a VC at all. While we started with fintech in 2016, today we invest into health, climate, storytelling, few other sectors also. See, my role, I think, again, as part of the team, just helping structure some of the things that we have. How do we look at various companies? Are there different things that we can do? What else can we do to support the founders? In the portfolio companies, are there connections that we can make, etc. So some of those things, at least I'm looking at today. There's a team that is doing most of the evaluation and stuff like that, and we have an IC also today to kind of take all the decisions, etc., in terms of the investments that we're making. So on the business side, I'm helping Nithin with a bunch of things and all the partnerships, all the new things that we're trying to do, etc. All of us trying to contribute. So there's a small team that is also helping Nithin with some of those things. So some of us are helping as well.
Got it. I think you guys are at center of action. This sector, fintech, has clearly stood out even during the funding winters. So, what are some of the things that excite you about this sector, and you see that there is a huge headroom right out?
Mm, So I think with fintech, right? I think obviously it gets convoluted in the sense that today, at least, most of fintech is all lending, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
majorly lending.
everybody's thinking about lending if you're thinking about fintech. But I think there's more to do with helping people manage their money. For example, somebody who is really getting into his first job today and ending up earning 50,000 rupees as his first salary. After his rent, after his food expense, after all the things that he wants to do for himself and his family from his first salary, does he really know where should he really invest the money into, or should he really invest in the markets?
Right.
Or what should he do with his money? Right? I think there's lots more to do with that education, with that awareness, helping people really do well, and not really selling products that probably is good for a business, but probably not good for the customer in the long run. But just focusing on that customer and figuring how can you really do better for him. I think that space there is lots more to do in India. There's a lot of people who want answers to those things, and I think probably we need more people who are helping out people on that front. So that is one. But apart from that, I think you're seeing a lot of people who are also looking at other solutions, right? I mean, could be taxes, could be insurance, could be pensions. So I
Fixed
think there's
deposit is also picking up.
fixed deposit as well. Correct.
Yeah,
I think, there's lots more to do on those fronts as well. So anything to do with savings and investments, right? I think we need to have more people working on those areas, because I think, lending and some of the other ancillary areas, there's already too many people doing really well. Payments, for example, there are already enough people pushing on those fronts. But again, on the savings front, on helping build out a life that you probably will have enough by the time you retire, and build out that plan. Not talking about early retirement and some of those other things that's in vogue today, but I'm saying, eventually knowing that you slowly save up, wealth compounds, and having that slow practice, and knowing that nothing really happens overnight, not falling for things where people are promising you unreal returns on a Telegram group or a WhatsApp group. So all that awareness education, I think, there's more to do there. And to be very honest, Shashank, I don't think there's a billion-dollar business to be built out of just that. Right? So that's
right,
why most people don't talk about it. And there's not really too much buzz around it, because there's no unreal growth in that business per se as
right,
well. But I think impact wise, I think that is where our heart really lies in terms of rain matter fintech. So we want to further some of those goals, some of those chases, and hopefully we'll do that. But beyond that, I think today, even in climate and health, I think climate, we are seeing problems everywhere. I think, the AQI is bad everywhere. We've been talking about it. You see pollution and plastic everywhere, even in the water bodies. There's microplastics everywhere. So the climate problem is not really anymore a government problem or a vague problem that all of us can really talk about, saying, it'll come 10 years from now. It is here,
right,
it is now. We are beyond the tipping point. So I think some of those problems really need some capital. And we are solving, or at least helping some founders solve some of those things. On the health side as well, today more Indians are being very conscious about what their health is, how fit they are,
right,
what they're eating, what they're playing, what's their lifestyle. So I think all of that also, we need more founders, more entrepreneurs, making it easier for Indians to stay healthier. Could be anything, right? Could be making it easier for them to cook healthy food, for example, or get access to healthier food without additives. So we have companies in our portfolio who enable that. Akshakalpa, for example,
right, right.
it's milk without antibiotics, it's organic, and all of that. While it sounds simple, I think, these are solutions that will be in vogue in 10 years, and I think those are the businesses that we're really chasing through Rain Matter as
Yeah, I think very rightly said, because I'm also trying to build a community for salaried professionals called it Salaried Club. So there also we keep on popping up these questions to
yeah.
understand from the audience
Yeah,
what are some of the challenges that they face. And there are two things that definitely stand out. First is managing money, and second is around mental health.
correct.
Because as you rightly told before, in India we have a competitive culture. Because if you are speaking with your friend, your third or fourth question would be promotion.
Yeah,
So we focus a lot on the output and very less on input. So I think that is one thing that we are also trying to solve for. But you talked about a lot of exciting sectors and the things that your fund is facilitating there. But how you identify basically these startups who can go and deliver, or maybe these startups who have potential? What's your framework that you look at while doing
yeah.
these
I think,
projects?
we try to keep it very simple, and whenever we talk about Rain Matter,
Hmm.
whenever today, fortunately, I think, with Nithin talking about Rain Matter, with Zerodha talking about Rain Matter, there's awareness that there is a fund, or there is a vehicle out there which is supporting businesses who are thinking about building business sustainably. So people organically reach out to us as well. When they reach out, I think we just have a conversation in terms of, how are they really thinking about building a business, what outcomes are they really chasing, uh,
Right,
how are they really thinking about some of these problem statements, right? And in most cases, it's just that, if there's a market for products like I just mentioned for the previous question. If there's a founder who's trying to solve for it and doing it the right way, then we want to support some of these founders. And all of these are inherently risky bets, and startups
right,
by nature are inherently risky anyway. So for us, it is all about supporting these founders. And we completely believe that today, as investors, one thing that we strongly believe is, we know founders know the best. So, while we're investing in these businesses, while we're saying we'll come and back you, it's not that we'll take a board seat. It's not that we're coming and giving you advice on how to run the business. Eventually, they know what is best. They're spending, 365 days on their business. An investor like us, we can't really look at a pitch deck. We can't really look at an update once every 30 days and say what's really good for the business. So, at least that's how we think about it. That's how we believe. And obviously there are investors out there who have invested in certain kinds of business, and there are learnings, and that learnings can apply. But when we're backing businesses who are doing things that probably haven't been done before, then there are no playbooks. Then there's nothing that we can really add and say, maybe we should do it a certain way. Because the founders then probably have to, take bets and experiment and see what works for them. So for us, the framework is that, if we like the founder, if we like how they're thinking, if they have built a great team who've already kind of gone and figured out and done experiments, then we'll back them. We'll back them with your capital so that they can do the next set of experiments. They can grow and scale that business essentially as well. But for us, it's also about connecting them to the next customer, connecting them to the next investor, connecting them to the next client. Could be anything, right? I mean, could be small things that we want to help them with. So it's all about that. If you like a business, if you like a product, if you like a problem statement, we want to do our small little help in that area. Capital is a small part of it. We try to do a bunch of other things which will grow business. So our framework is that. Obviously, there's no exit modeling. We're very patient capital. We're not really looking to exit these businesses. The idea is to support these founders as much as possible and figure out how can we really add value to that business.
So I also did a podcast with Pranav Pai, and he also follows this similar philosophy. He told me that I have to take bet on the person because
Yeah,
whatever he's showing me in his deck or her
yeah,
deck is
yeah,
basically a projection of future. So I can't take a bet on projection of future. I have to take the bet on the team itself, and that is
correct.
what you also told.
Yeah.
So Dinesh, if somebody is starting their entrepreneurial journey today, what are some of two or three things that you want them to focus on initially, and cut out the noise and just focus on these two three things that will help them establish a good business?
Right. I think the first, one thing that, again, these are not my learnings. I think these are learnings from our portfolio. I think there's some of the
Right.
founders who kind of come back and said, these are our learnings. So, I have a couple of things. One is, I think you need to have an exceptional team that is sticking with you through the thick and thin, right? Because I think in a startup, while you want to plan for all the optimistic, all the positive things, I think there are always ups and downs. And it's in those downs when you really know, how good is your team and how are they really supporting you. So build an exceptional team. And again, when I'm saying build an exceptional team, I'm saying do your diligence, put in that hard work to find people who really believe in what you're trying to do. Because if somebody is really enjoying what they're doing, they'll never leave that company, right? So I think you need to find those people. I think you need to also get them to own things so that they feel they're also responsible for certain things, and essentially have that team around you, because you need that support system for sure. That is one. Second thing, an extension to this, always know that things are never going to be all rosy. Always there are going to be some of the other challenges that is in front of you. So be ready for all of those challenges. I think mentally being prepared for the worst case outcome with anything in life, I think really helps. So I think people should definitely know. And the third thing is, pick the right partners who you really want to kind of go along with, right? So could be investors, could be clients, could be, marketing partners, could be anybody else. I think pick the right people, pick the people who you can really work with, people who you really enjoy spending time with. I think, these simple things, I think, will go a long way. I think everything else the founder already knows. I think about the problem statement, he knows. Probably about the
Right.
market, he knows more. About how do they really build an app, or what channel, how to go to the market, they definitely know. But I think some of these difficult things probably wouldn't know, or probably don't spend time enough on. So I think these small things, I think, is what they should focus on.
And what is your suggestion if somebody wants to start up? Do they need to gain some subject matter expertise, or without having subject matter expertise, you can just take leap of faith and jump at it and start solving the problem? Because I
See,
see both kind of founders. They are 19-year-olds, then they are 40, 45-year-olds as well in the
yeah.
market.
No, I think, see, I think there's no one size fits all in startups. I think you've seen all kinds of successes in startups, right? I think, it's an unpredictable space. And, if there was really a model, there was really a playbook, then I think we'd be sitting here talking about so many more startups, right? I think, not just a very few who have been very successful. I'd say it depends. There's a lot of context. There are certain areas where subject matter expertise really matters. For example, if you're working in biotechnology, you can't really get into that space without having the technical know-how. But if you're actually going into a field where nobody's really done something, there's no expertise around it, then fresh perspective really helps. But I'll tell you, even in finance, and even in fintech, in most cases, what even happens is, while experienced people do well, I think a fresh perspective of people who aren't really ingrained in that financial ecosystem also come with new ideas, right? Because people who are in the system for quite some time and people who know a lot about, say, fintech, they already have preconceived notions. But to build a startup, you really need to also disrupt some of these notions and also build out on things that are new. So I think new people without experience can also bring a lot of new perspectives. So experience, I wouldn't say is the most critical factor, but I would say having a clear vision of what you really want to chase, what is your end goal, I think that is more important. So obviously there are fields where experience really matters, but there are also fields where new perspective really helps. So there's no one size fits all, unfortunately, in startups, and we've seen all kind of successes even in our portfolio, even outside the portfolio. Zepto is one such example, right? I mean, if you ask the Zepto founders if they really envisioned themselves to be really good at quick commerce and optimization, efficiency, managing dark stores, and the operations of such a scale, I don't think they ever really would have thought that they would get into it. So, but I think it just happened. And I think, some of those chance encounters where you really end up liking a problem and you associate yourself with it and try to then learn as much as possible, I think that is more important. So if you enjoy it, if you, upskill yourself, you keep updating yourself, I think that is the advantage rather than, the knowledge that you bring in. While that helps to a certain extent, but I think that keeping yourself updated, always disrupting your own knowledge, I think that is
Yeah. So, an extension to that question is how you update your knowledge. What are some of the books that you read, or maybe what are some of the things that you follow on a regular basis to keep yourself updated? Because you operate in a sector where upskilling is of uttermost importance because you interact
yeah.
with so many founders.
Yeah, no, I keep talking to people. You know, everybody and anybody who reaches out to me, I end up learning from them.
Okay.
I go to colleges, I speak to students about what they're seeing. Young founders that I meet very often, I speak to them and figure out what they're doing, what they're seeing, what are new things that people are learning around me, etc. Even my colleagues, for example, I end up talking to them about what they're seeing, what they're learning. So I think those conversations really help. Apart from that, obviously I try to read as much as possible, anything and everything, right? And I try to filter it based on certain topics, etc. But I try to read everything. And the idea is, at least for me, what has worked for me is that the more I focus on particular things and also try to read more, try to speak to people more about those topics, I think that helps. I think conversations with people have helped me the most, in the sense that I know, reading something, watching a podcast will help you at least pick up the basics. But I think if you want to understand the nuances, really have to speak to people who are doing that job in and out. And also, there's no alternative to speaking. So you got to spend time doing that, spend time cultivating relationships, spend time catching up with people, right? Because I think everybody does have a network, but how many times do you really say hi to somebody and say, what are you seeing? Are you seeing something new? Is there anything that I should be knowing, etc.? I think that effort and those conversations go a long way. At least that's how I pick up most of the things.
Got it. And if you have to give one book recommendation to the audience watching this episode,
Yeah,
which one book will suggest them to read?
it's Hard Things About Hard Things. It's from Ben Horowitz. It's an amazing book, and it talks about the journey, right? I mean, of how an entrepreneur really thinks, and it's also about how a person really thinks. And that book, I think, one thing that stood out for me was it never really had things that were outlandish. I think it's just simple things. When things got tougher, what did they do? And when things were easier, what did they do? So I think some of those simple concepts, I think, was really nice. And I think there's multiple books that Ben has written. I think some of those books are amazing. But Hard Things About Hard Things is something that I read a long time back, and it stuck with me forever.
Yeah. I think apart from that, there is one that you guys must be following day in, day out, that is Psychology of Money, because you are at center of all
No,
the
yeah.
investment
No,
action.
Psychology of Money, Zurich Axioms. There is one other book called Algorithms for Life. I think, again, some of these things, some of these books are probably a little bit more gyan, but
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say, I really enjoy reading about experiences, what people are really feeling at that point in time. And, those books that really bring out that feeling of, the author was really feeling anxiety and feeling that helplessness. And it just puts everybody on the same pedestal, right? It shows you that, while great people have done great things, I think they're human at certain
Right.
moments. And I think, you need to, all of us really need to know that, everybody is human at the end of the day. Mistakes really happen, and people really aren't really inherently doing all the right things. All of us will make mistakes. We'll all learn from it. I think, that is of more of an important learning for me over the past few years. And I think everybody should know, everybody who's watching this is probably starting their career, going for an interview or whatever, right? I think, it shouldn't be that, you realize you can't make a mistake. You should make a mistake and you should learn from it, never repeat it. But I think everybody's going to make a mistake at some point. So I think some of those learnings are quite important.
Yeah, I think one question that I ask when I take interviews at Google is what has been your biggest failure and what has
Right.
been your learning from it.
Right.
Talking about interviews, would like to know what was the time when you gave your first interview and how was the overall experience of that interview?
Man, my first interview, I still distinctly remember. I think I don't know if it happens to people, but I distinctly remember the questions that I answered, the way I walked in, the way in my mind, because you read these articles about what should you really do when you enter an interview room and stuff like
Right,
that,
right, right.
and everything goes out of the window the moment you open the door because you're completely blank. You might have practiced this 1,000 times, but the moment you open the door, you see the faces of the interviewers. I remember, I had no clue what I should be doing. I just said hi and I sat down. And, apart from that, I think I just felt it was normal. At the end of the day, these people really want to hire people and they just want to know if you're good enough. And, the only thing I can do is put out my best front in front of them and give them exactly what I know. And after that, it's up to them, right, to evaluate. So I can only do my best. But yeah, I remember my first interview. I was super nervous. I don't remember the day, but or the time of the day, but I know I wasn't hungry throughout. I hadn't have had anything. I had probably not drank water, etc. Also, but I remember my first interview. It was really cool, and again, I think it was all about. I knew once I entered the room that I was prepared, and that helped me because I knew ki if they ask me something that I don't know, I was definitely sure I'm going to say I don't know. And
Right.
the fact that I was prepared, I knew that I had done my best, kind of helped me. I knew that there was nothing more I could have done at that point in time. So that really helped me. But yeah, I think the best thing you can do is prepare as much as possible. There's always time when you think you can do more, but I think prepare as much as possible. And after that, you can't complain.
Yeah, yeah. So I also remember my first interview was for Infosys back in 2011.
Yeah,
And the only feeling once I got selected next day was that somebody is valuing me at 3.25 lakh. That is the
correct.
biggest achievement of my life.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
at least
yeah,
now I have a market value which is 3.25 lakhs. So
correct.
that feeling was there.
Yeah.
But how was your interview process at Zerodha? So how many rounds were there and what kind of questions were coming for that this
Yeah, I
particular?
think Zerodha was slightly longer process because again it took me some time because multiple rounds I had to speak to multiple people, etc. Because the hiring at Zerodha also very careful in terms of how we kind of hire. The idea is to get people who really enjoy doing what they're doing and enjoy capital markets, and so that's why the process was longer. But it was pretty similar. Right? It was just to understand what value I can bring to the table. What is it that is expected of me? So just to kind of set those expectations, I think I needed to have multiple conversations as well. But it was smooth, and obviously today when we're hiring at Zerodha, I think as I said, the one thing that we're looking for is do you really enjoy doing what you're doing? Are you really thinking about building in financial services like how Zerodha is thinking about it? So if those values are in alignment, then everything else is easier. So I think that is probably the most important part of the process.
And you guys operated as a very lean team. So, what are some of the roles that are central to your team, and what kind of profiles you generally have in your team?
Right. So in Zerodha, I think obviously a large part of the today we are about 1,200 people. About 600 people are in support, and the rest of the team is about another 600 people. So that
Right,
includes account opening process, risk management, and stuff like that. So we are looking for people across some of these teams, and so the thing is the attrition is very low, and
right,
people who join Zerodha, I think, end up staying here, end up enjoying what they're doing, etc. So the hiring isn't that active. But on in terms of roles within Rainmatter also, yeah, we're obviously looking for people who really align themselves with the areas that we are looking at, fintech, climate, and health. And if there's somebody who's done some deep research in these areas, gained some expertise, or wants to work in that field, we're always on the lookout for such people as well. But again, I think you have to come or at least have the same thought process in terms of what outcomes you're chasing, what is it that you really want to do, how you're really thinking about working, what is it that keeps you engaged, etc. I think those things really matter as well. It's less about the roles. I think it's less about the JD. None of us really internally have any kind of titles. There's no hierarchy. It's a very flat structure. All of us sit together, all of us discuss, and every idea is up for discussion, right? And everybody's idea can be rejected at some point in time. So so that is coming from the top. And once that is in place, I think everybody feels that ownership. I think that is more important as well. You can't come in with that expectation saying, if I have a team, then if my team member disagrees with me, I think I'm gonna feel bad and stuff like that. So you're gonna be open. You have to be open. You have to be much more transparent. And I think those things are imbibed in everybody who's joining us. I think those things are more valuable. Those things are probably teaching you more about working in a professional field than anything else. That is what I'm thinking.
Got it. And a lot of people have this perception that in bigger brands such as say Zerodha or maybe Google, you
Yeah,
need to come from a tier one college at least, then you
yeah,
have chances of getting a
yeah,
shortlist.
yeah.
So what's your take on that? Does a big brand on your resume helps, or if you have decent experience, that can also count and counter that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can, I wish I could show you the rest of the team that is also around Nitin. There's nobody from a tier one college. There's nobody with a big brand. Obviously, I think, all that matters is how curious you are and how open you are for feedback and learning, right?
Right,
Because I think at the end of the day, everybody just has to keep improving, keep learning. There is no point in life where you, even if you're graduating from a tier one great IIT or a great IIM, right? I think you can't really sit back. Nobody really sits back and says, okay, I've made it, I'm done. I think
right,
everybody just has to keep learning. I think, and that hunger, Shashank, I don't know if I might be wrong, but I think that hunger is probably a little bit more in people who are not from tier one colleges, because I think
right,
they have that feeling of having missed out on a few things. And I know, they probably could have been to a tier one college, probably missed out slowly or slightly, and people who probably want to do something else but aren't doing that. I think that hunger and that fire is there. So I think non tier one college, non people who aren't really doing their dream jobs, I think, if that hunger is visible and if it's there, then I think that is an added advantage anyway. So I feel if you're not from a tier one college, I think you have an advantage also. You have that
right.
hunger, you have that desperation, and I think you will do really really well in interviews, because I think that really shines out as well. Because if you're from a tier one college, I think you've already done well. Might be a little lesser, right? I mean, you talk about people who are playing Ranji cricket versus people playing in the Indian cricket team, right? You put
Right.
them on a field and get them to do tryouts. I think somebody who's already in the cricket team, I think he knows कि यार already I'm selected, so why should I put in more effort?
While
For
Ranji
the
one will
person,
be the hustler one.
yeah, and he'll do everything possible, right? I think he'll wake up at 4 o'clock and he'll be ready for it. I think some of those things I think is also nuances that we have to take care of. So yeah, I think if you're not from a tier one college, it doesn't really matter. If you have that hunger, I think put in that extra effort, put in that extra hour to prepare, rather than that spending time worrying about anything else.
Yeah, I think after recent Australia tour, we'll see more players playing Ranji going
Yeah,
forward. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You talked about the flat hierarchy at Zerodha, and how is the work culture like? What kind of systems or processes are in place if somebody new joins, how they are up to speed, and what are some of the things that you like about working at Zerodha?
Right. So when you say culture, again, we keep discussing about this in the sense that for us, the culture is exactly how we operate and how we work, right?
Okay.
And our culture is pretty open. If you have an idea, you present it. If you disagree with something, you speak up. If you wanna know something, wanna learn something, wanna ask something, you ask. Everything is open. So there's nothing, there's no topic, there's no question, there is no suggestion, there's no feedback that you can't share. That is our culture. In the sense that if you're concerned about something, you speak up, we'll address that. If you're wanting something, you speak up, we'll address that. And I think that in itself is our culture, in the sense that everybody has an opportunity to contribute and to speak up. And for everybody who's new, I think the idea is to understand how we really kind of think about our clients, our customers, how we really think about building a business. It's all about long term. Um, I think the more you think about it, if your view is long term and if you are taking decisions that are more long term focused, you end up making good choices, because you're not optimizing for that short run, not optimizing for that next quarter, the next year, etc. So you end up doing what is right for your customers, your clients, your employees, and everybody else. So I think that's how we really think. More
Got
long term and more open. Yeah.
got it. I think I this brings me to my last question. So, if
Yeah.
somebody is going for their interviews, what
Yeah.
are some of the hacks that you would like to share with them to ace their interviews, basis your experience?
Again, I don't know if I'm the right person to share this, but as I said, I've gotten lucky so many times. But I'd say be prepared. Yeah. I think nothing beats preparation. I don't think there's any fancy answer to doing well in interviews. I think technical know-how, technical answers is a given. You should know. If you're going for a software developer interview, you need to know data structures, you need to know coding, you need to understand what is the languages that you're supposed to use and stuff like that. But I'm saying mentally also, for you to be prepared, I think you need to be just spending enough time knowing that this opportunity is coming up. Spend enough time learning about anything and everything else that is around. I think that in itself goes a long way. Just being prepared and just understanding that you'll do your best, and then everything else as an outcome you have to take it as it is. So yeah, I think being prepared and just accepting the outcome, I think those two things will really help, because you're not under the pressure, and don't go in thinking, if I don't get this, then what? Never
Right.
think about that. Stay in the moment and to do your best. Every minute is different. If you don't end up answering some question in an interview, forget that. Now the next phase of the interview, think about it from a fresh perspective. Don't let your past define your future. So I think some of those things really help. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I completely agree, because some of the interviews that I've seen people cracking really well are the interviews where they went without any expectation.
Correct, correct, correct.
And when you get into an interview thinking that this is one interview that I need to crack, then you get all the jitters. It will show in your answers. You will get, maybe your stomach will start aching, that something is about to happen.
Yeah, yeah,
I think great conversation with you, Dinesh, and thank you so much for taking out time. I think people will learn a lot. They'll get an understanding that there are alternate sectors as well where they can go and build their careers.
yeah.
And thank you again.
No, thanks, Shashank. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah. Cheers.